the political right is likely always going to be the one picking up the can on this because it thinks in terms of the nation, whereas for as long as the left and increasingly the centre wants to be focused on transnationalism in whichever form they want, is they're never going to move towards a national interest because what they've done is they've said it's a boogeyman that leads to bad things.
Yes.
It leads to fascism, and
Yes.
I'm probably making a bit of a leap here, but Rory Stewart very recently was on
Yes.
a TV show where he said, people are looking around at all of these problems, and there are so many problems besetting the company, and unfortunately, the solution they come up with looks a lot like fascism. But in reality, let's think about what he's referring to there, right? You've got people who are saying, look, we've had more immigration every year since the Anglo-Saxon period. We've got at least 200,000 migrants, legal migrants that have arrived on boats over, I don't know, say 5 years or something, that are now spread across the country, and we see bad news stories every single day. We have many of our cities are now minority majority, so we have white British in the minority. Again, it's not a race point, but it's a people are culture, and we do see political sectarianism arising out of diasporas that are recently arrived in the last 50, 60 years. I don't think there is anything pertaining to fascism for a bunch of people in the country to go, hang on, is any of this in our national interest? Should we start thinking about how to dissolve those problems? So how is it that we either lead to integration, or in the event that can't happen, how do we get rid of that problem because the national interest is not being served? But if you have people in the centre saying anyone who raises an issue with the problems of a highly financialized state that has outsourced all of its industry and that is importing lots of people that are either competing with other welfare dependents or for handouts from the welfare state and the lower ends of the labour market, you just say fascism, that means that everyone on the left and centre just thinks any discussion of the national interest is bad. And so how do we get them back in the fold so they can do what you're talking about, Philip, which is, come on, let's just have a sensible discussion about whether all those things mentioned by people who, by the way, probably were Labour voters at one point,
Yep.
Can actually be seen as legitimate topics for the national interest and not behind some cordon sanitaire.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. I think this will be forced upon everyone to a greater or lesser degree, in as much as the transformation of global order means that people will have to look to domestic sources of legitimacy and authority to enact what they want. So I think this is so I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said, but in terms of your challenge of how can you expect the left and the liberals to be included within a new political nation, and to accept the fact that that their political aspirations need to be rooted through the nation rather than through transnational hopes and transnational and globalist institutions. I think that that is forced upon us, all of us, including the left and the liberals, by the fact the Americans are basically rolling up the empire, or at least withdrawing the American empire to their own hemisphere. So, and as much as Donald Trump has said that it's America first, and we're not, Dad isn't going to come to your room and tell you to tidy up, or you're not going to get any pocket money, that is over. That kind of, in which we expect political order and political authority to be provided from the outside, that is over. And so the sooner that we all accept that, and especially the left and especially liberals, then we can start thinking about what kind of nation we want, and that we have to accept then certain kinds of compromises, certain kinds of hard political realities for all Western states, all of which, with the exception of the US, are middle powers, effectively, in terms of, their economic weight and political weight in the global order. And they have the potential to be prosperous once again. They have the potential to be technologically dynamic, wealthy, and also bastions of liberty and democracy. But that is contingent on them accepting a new role in the world and being willing to defend their interests rather than outsourcing it to America.